Anthony Chan is a former chief economist at JP Morgan Chase. He's also worked as an economist at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. Anthony, welcome and thanks for joining us. Both sides digging in their heels. Is there any sign that either Washington or Beijing will back down, in your opinion?
I think that when you play a dangerous game of chicken, I think at some point either one or both parties have to realize that they have to take a step back to avoid mutual destruction. The fact that the Chinese are not pledging to take it to the next level and impose even higher tariffs, I think is at least a step in that direction of suggesting that they don't want this to get out of control.
Donald Trump said on Sunday that talks for later this month are still on schedule. How optimistic are you about those and about any potential outcome?
I think that at this point, given that the United States sort of postponed the additional tariffs until December, it is at least offering a small fig leaf or olive leaf of an attempt to try to negotiate. And I think that that in itself, along with the Chinese not accelerating and putting on additional tariffs, opens the door for some potential negotiation from both parties. I mean, there's no question that we obviously import more from China, and therefore China is hurt more than the United States. But the reality is that both countries are hurt, and the reality is that if this escalates further, you can, in fact, envision a scenario where both China and the United States move into a recession, and I don't think it's in anyone's interest to move in that direction.
So let's talk a little bit about how they're being hurt in both places. First, in the U.S., how has this been affecting people? Who is it affecting as well?
Well, all you have to do is look at the latest consumer sentiment or consumer confidence numbers coming out from the University of Michigan for the month of August. It dropped by the biggest amount that we've seen in a single month in close to 7 years. All you have to do is look at last year's trade deficit in the United States, the highest trade deficit compared relative to the world that we've seen in 10 years. Why? Because trade uncertainty lowers global economic growth. So even if we're not hurt as much because we're a more relatively closed economy, less demand for our products anyway will in fact lower economic growth, not only in the United States, but around the world. The IMF, the World Bank, they've all lowered global economic growth numbers. Next year, I think that China will probably grow less than 6%, perhaps only maybe 5.8 or 5.9%. And the U.S. has a good opportunity to grow the economy less than 2%. We obviously both countries should be growing a lot faster, but this dark cloud of trade uncertainty and tariffs are holding or suppressing economic growth for both countries, and that's never a good thing.
Tariffs are essentially a tax. Donald Trump says Americans are not paying for them. Is he right?
No, of course not. All you have to do is look at the S&P 500 companies that are impacted by the tariff, and what do you see? You see that their stocks are selling off. You see that the investors are getting a lot nervous. You see companies, the department stores are saying that they may not be able to pass all that on to the consumer. Maybe they'll pass some of it, but the other amount they may not be able to pass. Yes, the Chinese may absorb a little bit, but the bottom line is not all of it is going to the consumer, and certainly not all of it is being absorbed by China. So everyone loses. The companies that sell the products, the consumers that pay a slightly higher price, and to some extent, even China, because either margins will come down or perhaps their currency becomes a little bit weaker in order to offset some of the effects of the tariffs. So really all parties are in fact getting hurt by these tariffs.
Economist Anthony Chan joining us live from New York. Thank you for your insight.
Pleasure.